Hey, what's up, guys? I want to start off this video by saying that I am not necessarily anti-Mac or anti-Apple. In fact, I'm kind of rooting for them, and I want to kind of hold them to a higher standard. Because in my day, starting out, Macs were, used by like professional, like creative professionals in music and in video. And now it's just in video, and they've completely alienated a particular group of their consumer base, and I find it to be very, I guess, unacceptable. This is coming from someone who has used Macs, the poorly designed SMC controller that manages the battery. Effectively blew up in this, so it doesn't work anymore. But I had it for around 10 years. Very rigid, great build quality, and I really enjoyed it. And this video is part 2 of the video entitled Apple Doesn't Care About Computer Musicians or something like that. This is part 2, and this stems from their recent announcement. They've announced a new Mac Pro, not the trash can one, which is pretty cool. And the first thing, Steve Jobs would have fired everyone because let me just refresh this here. So in my day, when, a new Mac product was announced, you could immediately see it on the website. You go to Mac Pro on their website, it's not there. It's still showing the old one. This would never happen if he was still alive. I think everyone would be fired. Yeah, he would probably just start frothing at the mouth and screaming at everyone, because it's still showing the old one. Like, this is like in 2005 when the Mac Pro, the 2005 model, like the holy crap, this is awesome model geared towards video and music professionals. It was available on the website right after it was announced. It was really an exciting time. And I guess there's new things they have this stock they want to get rid of. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. That is beyond ridiculous. So, new Mac Pro comes out, or is announced, I suppose. It's not out yet. And there's this video that is, to me, extremely dishonest about, performance for musicians. So I have to kind of explain a thing about how the audio world works in terms of, computing. So we have video and, CAD, computer-aided design. They work very well with multi-core processors. You know what I mean? The more cores, the better. It can allocate processing across all cores, and you can have other applications running. Usually, you do, and all that fun stuff. More cores, the better. I completely get that. It's very well understood. And the Mac Pro, the specifications, 8 cores at 3.5 hertz, which is respectable. Mine also has 8 cores, but it's at 4.2 gigahertz right now, and there's a reason for that. I'll let you know. The top specifications, which would be more tempting for people, is 28 cores at 2.5. That is very good for video, where it can multi-thread everything, certain CAD programs, Blender, 3D modeling, things like that. You can have that across all cores, and rendering and blah blah blah. That's okay, and usually they have a lower clock speed, but they make up for it for more cores. This is completely unacceptable for the audio realm because of how audio works. So I'm going to explain something to you, and it's true for all digital audio workstations. Don't listen to anyone that tells you otherwise. So this is the page for Ableton, the help page, and how it works is, for a single chain of effects, it cannot spread that across multiple threads, right? It can't do that. It has to be on one thread, and just for timing and things like that, it has to be on one thread. So when you have very complex vocal chains, some effects for, things like that. You can get pretty crazy with your effects chains. Those are all on one thread. Okay, so what that means is, let me see here. Straight from Ableton's mouth, Live uses one thread per signal path. So if you have a lower clock speed per thread, you'll get worse performance for that single thread. Like you can have a gajillion tracks, let's say. No, let's just, you can have 100 tracks, each with its own simple effect. Let's just EQ and compression, something, low to modest. You can have a bunch of those. Your CPU won't care. It can eat that for breakfast. But if you have all those tracks on one track, that long track, like all those things, that will kind of translate that load, consolidate it into one thread because it has to, and then you'll get, worse performance overall. So, straight from Ableton's mouth, and this is true for everything that has real-time audio. Holy crap! Both are important. If your budget allows it, we recommend getting a faster processor and maximum amount of cores that you can afford. So mine is 4.2, and I have 8 cores, which is 16 threads. So I have yet to max out for what I do. I've yet to kind of max it out. And you can actually demonstrate this to yourself. You can have a track loaded up with effects and things like that. Go into your power settings and then reduce the clock speed of your CPU. The performance will suffer. So keep that in mind. So the pros and cons: more cores, slower clock speed. Live supports multi-threading, but it does not multi-thread a single chain of effects. I want to make that very clear. I just want to hammer that home. And it will work very well with larger sets. So the idea is to have a balance between clock speed and core count, and you'll be able to run more apps. And that's why the Mac Pro, with its more cores, you'll be able to run multiple applications at the same time. So if you have like Blender and Final Cut Pro going on, what I mean, things like that, or CAD and whatever else you use if you're doing CAD stuff. You can have more things open. So fewer cores, higher clock speed, you get better single-threaded performance. You could have more intensive effects chains. So when we're looking at like things that are intent, like analog modeling stuff, things like that, you can have more complex effects chains. And it's not as strong in multi-threading performance. So we're going to keep that in mind, which brings me, so we all understand how audio works, right? And there's this video, which makes me want to jump out a window because their dishonesty about what's going on is just I don't even know where to begin. So apparently Logic Pro is apparently some people use it. I didn't know that. I'm just teasing. So they've said, oh yeah, the performance of Logic has improved, and this is really impressive. So let's give this a watch here.
Musical instrument performance. So let's have a listen. Okay. So we wanted to have some fun and see just how far we could push this powerful new Mac. What you're looking at here is a brand new version of Logic, and the theme of this release is all about performance. So to show performance, I'm going to use these incredibly realistic sampler instrument libraries. And I use these libraries so that it sounds exactly like a real orchestra when I create my parts. So let's add a 50-piece percussion ensemble to this score. And how about a 100-piece orchestra? And how about another full orchestra just because, we can. Now, many composers have to actually add a second and third computer to be able to run these massive orchestral libraries. But the new Mac Pro with its CPU power and RAM can do this all in a single unit. So of course, I'm going to need a lot more to push this Mac Pro. So let's add a ton more tracks. So we've never seen this before in Logic. I've got 300, 400, 500. We can now have 1,000 audio tracks and 1,000 software instruments in Logic.
Okay, so I want to start off by saying that this isn't exactly that impressive. In terms of like what they're kind of making it out to be. I don't want to sound like a I don't know, one of those people online. But what they're demonstrating is something called contact. And contact right there, see, contact is it's basically a kind of like a souped up sampler. And there are these libraries that East, West, and what's the other one? Spitfire. What they do is they sample these orchestras, just doing like one note, and they have like these round robin things and things like whatever, and they capture a performance of an orchestra, and then there are these gigantic sample libraries, and yeah, you can play them with MIDI. So the all these tracks aren't actually an instance of contact, right? So when you load up contact, it will load something called an ensemble. And this ensemble is a collection of samples, and the contact is in its own kind of application. When I'm just trying to explain it, just in case someone knows nothing about computer music, whatever. And the majority of these tracks are MIDI being fed into that single instance of contact, right? You can see that. You have I can't really read that. My eyes don't work these days. Like the high and the low. And yeah, so this would be the African ensemble. That would be like a contact thingamajig. And then all these MIDI devices. MIDI is just notes being fed into it also. The idea of having a bunch of MIDI tracks isn't at all that impressive. It's, like analog modeled things that like require a lot of CPU. They're not actually showing and putting this machine under stress. So how it works with contact is there's two options. Either, typically you want to load all the contact will automatically load the samples into RAM. And mind you, these new Mac Pros have like 1.5 terabytes of RAM. So what they're doing is they're essentially just throwing a bunch of audio into RAM, which is really fast, and they're just reading from the RAM, right? And that's all, not that super impressive because you're just throwing a bunch of, RAM horsepower at it. And, you could see their chains, like this just compressor and EQ, and some bus stuff and, yeah, contact and whatever else. Another thing is, you have all these tracks here, and I wonder why they had to kind of print things to audio. Like in my machine, if I, spent $1,000 on RAM and I loaded everything into RAM, I could probably do this too, like out of the box, like super easy, right? Every piece of audio software has that ability. I can load these all into RAM. And with the 64-bit version of Ableton and other things as well, I can basically, yeah, just load it all into RAM, like with a theoretical limit of like, what is it, like 100 and something exabytes of RAM? Yeah, I don't even know. You can go pretty bananas. And I'm sure Ableton can exceed the 1,000 audio track limit. And I find it to be super dishonest. It's like, yeah, we're just, streaming a bunch of things from RAM. Look at all we can do. It doesn't mean anything. What means, we want to look at, you know, data throughput, how fast, latency, can you do real time, monitor, like how does it perform with, blah blah blah. It's like, hey, we got a Thunderbolt device, freaking 100 tracks in, 100 tracks out, with less than 4 milliseconds response time, running into a console. This is used for pro audio, live audio, sound reinforcement, like all these. They just threw a bunch of RAM at it, and somehow people are impressed. And like the majority of these tracks are MIDI. Like, what the heck? Like, are they trying to? Do they think we're stupid? I know it's a serious question. Maybe I'm missing something. But yeah, like I can have a gajillion MIDI tracks, and 1,000 tracks. You could easily, if you did this orchestral stuff, each instance of contact has 16 MIDI in, so 16, it starts to accumulate. It's really easy to load it up and stuff like that. But somehow, everyone's impressed. And then it's like, okay, well, audio is an afterthought. Final Cut Pro, they have like FPGAs that decode like 8K video, 3 streams of it. Like, what the heck? You know what I mean? Like, super powerful stuff. You can do it in real time, like specially built hardware. And like with this, they just, again, threw a bunch of RAM at it. Anyway, that's my rant soapbox thing, and that stand. I can't even believe that it's $1,000. That's ridiculous. Anyway, if that's what you're into, and it's a neat little tax write-off, go ahead. But just realize that for what we do, the base model for audio will actually, in some cases, outperform the souped-up one, because the base model has a higher clock speed. But if you're into video editing and CAD and Blender and you run a business and you have a budget, go ahead, whatever. Anyway, that is typical Apple. And yeah, that's it. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts, I guess. Take care and have a good one.